Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Seven Eighths, a podcast to share stories on failures and rejections. There are no fairy tale endings in this podcast. My fellow conversationalists aren't past the mountain of struggle. In fact, some of them might still be in it. I hope this podcast serves as a forum for friends and acquaintances to exchange tales of defeat. Defeats that make the 7/8 part of our lives, like the part of the iceberg you can't see. By sharing these stories, I hope we can all normalize failures and thereby win over that fear of defeat. Because failing is just a part of living. I hope you will listen and relate. Do leave me a note of feedback and critique. I am on Twitter at FarmNectar. Now to our episode.
Welcome to episode 4 of The 7/8ths. For this episode, I invited my cousin, Preetha Appan, to a conversation. Growing up with Preetha, I've seen her as a wicked smart, goofy, and caring sister. She's now an accomplished software engineering leader, but she has seen battles that few of us know. She shares her personal difficult moments and her professional struggles. This conversation wasn't easy for either of us, so thank you, Preetha, for agreeing to do this. Let's go into the conversation. Just listen in.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for having me on this podcast. And this is not just now. I think now with social media and so on, everyone has, 1,000 followers on Twitter and like 500 friends on Facebook and so on. But at the end of the day, those relationships or conversations are very much surface level. You only get to see the highlight reels of people's life. Like you only get to see the happy moments, but not like the struggles that happen. No one posts about that. And so this sort of format where you can kind of really talk to one person and really explore these things in depth, I think that's a great idea. So
Thank
more
you.
power to you for doing this,
Thank you.
especially with everything that's going on in the world right now. First, I want to be grateful for what I have. I have a roof over my head.
Yeah.
I feel in general I feel pretty safe when I go out. Some people in this country don't feel safe when they go out.
Yeah.
Like we forget to be grateful for what we have. So I just
Yeah.
want to start
Yeah.
with
Yeah, good point. At the end of the day, we're still talking from a place of privilege.
right,
And
exactly.
I fully acknowledge that. True.
Yeah. If you were asking what's one of the hardest struggles or something that I'm still going through, it's the being the parent of a child with autism. It's been a long struggle. I can start from all the way at the beginning to now and so on, and like the different stages of grief and what you go through.
Let's dig in a little deeper. I mean, when you realize or when you were told, right? How did you even take it in? I can't say this without tearing up, but
It started off with just some warning signs and like seeing that my daughter was not talking much and not interacting much socially. So in fact, the first person that alerted to this was actually my mother. So when she came to visit, when Maya, my daughter, was about 18 months old, she said something's wrong. I think you need to get her checked. So I actually did not react well to my mom saying that. In retrospect, I should have been grateful or I should have heeded. Instead, I got very upset with my mother. And then she got upset as well. She was like, I don't know what to say, but you have to face this. And then I fought with her and I'm kind of tearing up. Then we were still sort of like, oh, she's going to grow out of it. It's some temporary setback or something. Next person that was really very forthright with us was one of her teachers at daycare. So one day she called us aside and she said, have you had your daughter assessed for autism? I think she's on the spectrum. And then she started saying a few of the things like she's walking on tippy toes. She doesn't like sound. She's not interacting with other children. Both me and my husband, we got upset with the teacher. We went and complained to the director of that daycare saying like, and then the director was like, that's not her job. She should, I'm very sorry and so on. So, but even as I'm reacting, right, like there's something in the back of my head at this point that's saying that it's time to face it. No, let's go see a professional. We can't. This was between 18 months to 20 months old. It took a while. Like at least for us, our journey was that we didn't immediately deal with it. We were still kind of trying to give it some time and like looking up some things that we could try, but without going to a professional. So we were doing that for a while, like just trying supplements, like it's a supplement issue, it's a nutrition deficiency issue, and so on. So that went on for a couple of months. Pediatrician recommended, no, it's better you get assessed. The first assessment, it was again brutal. What they make you do is they make you fill out this, pages and pages of questionnaire. It asks you all the milestones, starting from like birth to, when did they first crawl, how do they do eye contact, how many word sentences do they speak, how many words do they know, as you're filling out, right? Like you go through these ebbs and flows. So in one section, I had this like hope, because one of the sections is like physical milestones, and there my daughter was pretty much fine, right? Like when we were going through that section, we were like very happy, like, oh, it's going to be fine. And then when it came to like verbal and social interaction, that was all, no, 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 she's not doing this, she's not doing this. So even as you're filling that out, you just feel like failed some sort of test as a parent. You've done something wrong, and that's why this is happening. And then you wait for a while, then they come back and they give you this kind of percentile thing, like where is your child in terms of percentile. And that I've never faced. I don't want to see anything like that ever again, but it is the reality now, right? Like you move on from it. But the first time you see that in black and white, like I can't describe how painful that was. So it says things like, when it comes to verbal ability, 1 percentile compared. So, basically 99% of kids are more, are able to do more socially, or are able to talk more socially. So all of those things were in the 1 percentile, and like pretty brutal. I didn't have the luxury of just being able to quit my job, at least at the time. I was on a visa, work visa, and you have to keep, in order to maintain status, you have to keep working. All this stuff costs money as well, so you need both income.
Insurance.
So being able to kind of go back to work while dealing with all of that was one of the toughest times in my life.
Where did you find your strength? Because this isn't a setback that you can just say it's a setback and I'm going to pick up and the journey continues in the path that I envisioned it'll continue in. I mean, the feeling of having failed as a parent, just that hurts. Where did you find your strength?
It's like I had multiple sources of strength. So initially, I wouldn't say I was strong at all. Like I spent a lot of time just crying. In the early days, really the source of strength was my daughter itself. So, she needed us, right? Like, okay, fine, we cried for a week, you cried for 2 weeks, but you can't, you have your job as a parent to do. You still have to help her, you still have to get her ready, you still have to take her to all these appointments. She still needs you as a mom. So realizing that, like, I have to do this, she needs me. The second source of strength was just meeting other parents. We had a little support group of moms that would talk to each other and help each other out, and like sort of be each other's support system. One of the moms sent a poem that's every parent of a special needs kid has seen this poem. The poem written from the point of view of a woman who like gone on a plane to go to Rome because she wanted to see, all the historic places in Rome, and like wanted to eat pasta and culture in Italy and so on. But then when the plane lands, she realizes that she's in a very different country. She's like, this is where I've landed. Like she can't go to Italy, she can't go anywhere else. And then she starts talking about, well, maybe this place doesn't have pasta, but it has the
Dikes.
Dikes, yeah, there we go. Then the poem goes on to, talk about there may not be this opera that you can go to, but you can go here and so on. I guess the main lesson learned from that is life is a journey, parenting is a journey. And like you thought that you were going to have a certain type of parenting journey, and you didn't, you got something else, but that's still, there's good things in that as well. I think that gave me a lot of perspective. I have to admit that I had to read that poem several times. Many times I was angry at that poem or like pissed off and like, what do they know? But then I found myself going back and reading it every time I felt like a little depressed or having a hard time.
Talk to me about how you and Suga, your husband, went through this together, because it would not have been easy, to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like stuff like this puts a lot of strain on the marriage. it's definitely not easy. We're definitely still struggling with it in our own ways. I'll cry a lot, and then after I finish crying, I'll then move on. I'll be like, okay, here's what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Whereas Suga is more the broody type, so he won't cry, he won't express what he's feeling, but he'll go
Yeah.
about with like a frustration and being upset for days or weeks, and sometimes I wouldn't realize like, and then he'll
Yeah.
tell me, 4 days ago when we went to that park, and I saw this other dad like playing with his daughter and playing basketball, and I'm just thinking if I'll ever be able to do that with mine. I'm like, wait, what? What 4 days ago? What park? Because by then I've already forgotten it or moved on. It's tough.
How are you sharing the parenting? How is the support set up? And even without such deep struggles,
Hmm.
uh, parenting feels really, really hard. And nobody tells us this. How do you even get through that? Because I feel like a failure with my kids. I always am thinking about what could I have done differently?
Hmm. Hmm.
Why am I not able to get through to my daughter? Why can't my son understand, what I'm trying to do is good for them? And then on top of that, there's differences in parenting styles. And I can only imagine how much more complex it can be when you have to face this with the additional awareness that it's a difficult journey to begin with. So, going back to the original question, how are the two of you managing it? How are you balancing it?
Early on, it was certainly more on me because I think mentally I'm just a little bit stronger. I'm just going to say it.
Mm. I think women in general, mentally, we somehow come out
Yeah,
stronger
yeah.
in in the face of dire situations.
Yeah, so things like, okay, which therapy to take her to, what's the schedule, what are we doing, what are we doing for summer, what's the camp that can accommodate all of Maya's needs, and what happens in school. And with school,
Hmm.
there's these meetings that you need to go to when you're in the special ed program called
Yep.
ARD meetings, so you have to prepare for that. So all of that used to be me. Anything to do with sort of sports or sort of physical interaction and kind of teaching Maya how to ride a bike or play soccer or do physical stuff, like that's all his department. And I have to emphasize like how important that is too for every kid, but especially important for kids on the spectrum. In other words, like he does all the fun stuff and I do all the boring like academics. I joke though. I think in general every married couple fights, but I think when you have a special needs kid, you fight actually even more. Like you may fight over the silliest things, which appear silly after a few years after you've gone through it, but in that moment, because there's so much risk attached to it, right? Like, so if one
Yeah.
person might be like, I really want to give this medication, and the other person be like, I don't believe in any kind of medication, or
Yeah.
while,
Yeah.
and then you have to just decide and talk through it, and sometimes you're not in the mental space to talk through it. So one person gives up and says, okay, fine, you do whatever you want, and then I've done that and to him, and he's done that to me as well. So all of that,
Yeah.
and then on top of it, I think what adds more strain to the marriage is like these well-meaning relatives, and I say well-meaning in air quotes because they could just give advice and go on, right? So we've had all sorts of stuff said to us like, oh, did your wife work during pregnancy? I think that's why this happened, or actually, instead of sending her to school, if you just both of you quit your jobs and just taught her full time, you can turn this around. Or there's this faith healer, and just go work with. He'll charge you an arm and a leg. You call him, and he's going to say something on the phone, and just do that for 6 months, and everything will be okay. So just like everybody has some, everybody has a silver bullet, and then so it's not easy. Yeah.
With so much going on the personal side, professionally, if somebody looks at your profile, LinkedIn profile, your
Mhm.
Twitter profile, I don't think they would even imagine in their wildest of imaginations that you have a lot that you're already carrying through. How are you even doing it? I mean, What did you do in the early days when it was a struggle at home? Did it spill over? For me, even just the first pregnancy, right? Going through the first pregnancy, the newborn baby at home, I felt like a failure. I felt like I wasn't able to contribute at work, lack of sleep. And I look around and everybody else seemed to be fine. There were people with kids that probably went through this, but they looked like Instagram posts. You know what I mean? They just, everybody looked so fine. And I felt something was wrong with me that I wasn't able to cope with this. And I can't even imagine how much more difficult it would have been with you. So, how did you go through it?
In the last 5 years or so, even professionally, it's become acceptable to talk about these things. This was not true, I think, at least when because
Yeah.
I had maybe 3 years of work experience when I was going through what I was going through with Maya.
Yep.
So I felt like I'm
Yep.
still trying to get a footing. So I didn't tell anybody for many years. I just I used to go sit in the bathroom and cry after receiving yet another assessment, that one of these one percentile things, and then have to worry about, okay, what's the schedule, when do we take her to therapy, and all that. And so I would be overwhelmed, and like I'd able to sit in my car and cry and then go to work, or like take a break, go to the bathroom, cry, and then go back and pretend like no one else would know what happened. And then I think eventually I just couldn't handle it anymore. So I'm trying to remember when this was. I think when Maya was about 4 years old, I talked to my boss and was like, I really can't do this anymore, but I can't quit either. Like, can we arrange some sort of part-time? Like, I still want to maintain visa status. But what's the minimum amount I can work and still be on this visa? Because
Mm-hmm.
I need to be there for my daughter. And luckily they were very understanding and so on. And in fact, the first thing my manager said to me was, why didn't you say any of this all this time? Like, you could have told this more than a year, or like you could have told or shared this with us, and we could have worked something out. Yeah,
Yeah.
so they were very supportive, and certainly I had by then I had a track record. Like, I'd done a lot of good work for them. We worked something out, and yeah, like that actually helped. Like, I think I was part time for about 2.5 years, and even then, actually, this might just be me and my work ethic. There were many people, even when I was part time, who didn't know that I was part time.
One of the other episodes, we were talking about how women have to somehow do more
Mm-hmm.
uh, to kind of get the same amount of street cred, so to speak.
I completely
Uh,
agree with that. Yeah, yeah. I'm
yeah.
trying
So,
hard to fight it now. Like, I think one of the reasons I sort of was interested in management or switched was that I didn't want other people going through what I went through. And so, you can try and initiate change even as an individual contributor, but I think you can do more. You have more agency and you can do more to at least set up people within your organization for success. So, but yeah, I completely agree with that. You have to do more to get the same street cred, or like, but one of the things that happened when I was in maternity leave was this big project that I had worked on before I'd left. They'd hired someone else who came in and like basically threw away everything that I wrote and rewrote it.
oh wow.
And so I came back to like this thing being completely rewritten. And I had some questions, like I was like, is this really the right thing to do? And so on. And I had asked, but at the time I was the only woman. And so I generally was having confidence issues. I didn't feel like I was smart enough to even ask why did they rewrite it. I asked and they gave me a very dismissive answer. When the company grew a little more and they hired a few more people, like a couple of others also saw this and had the same questions as me. And all of a sudden, it became like a thing. Like, fast forward a couple of years, the replacement became harder and harder to maintain. So eventually, the VP just decided, like, she reverted it to sort of a state that I had left it in before maternity leave, and then
Yeah.
ported forward. That feels good, not bad, right? Like, okay, yeah, I should have just been more confident and asked this, even for things like high profile projects versus glue work, like integration.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to not get those high profile ones until I sort of forced my way into, like, I would go read those design docs and ask questions and like poke my nose and start talking, and then eventually those I would become included in that. But I've had just sort of not.
Yeah. So that's actually an interesting topic we can double click a little bit into. I would have assumed, I mean, given that, I would have just assumed that things happened for you. You have the credentials, you have the credibility, and I would have just assumed that you landed the right kind of projects, you landed those high profile engagements. Talk to me through some of the issues or the struggles that you have to go through, in spite of your stellar record.
I think you know this about me. I was more of an introvert when I was a kid. And so
Yeah.
big change that I had to make professionally was like at least become an extrovert at work. Still, I'm an introvert in like family gatherings or social settings. I don't, but at work, I'm an extrovert. I started taking more interest in what other people were doing, even if it wasn't directly related to what I was doing,
Okay.
and then asking questions or like figuring out if there's place where I can contribute to like this bigger thing that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that enough times and then you start getting the interesting work as well. Things that you're interested in may switch. So for me, for a long time I was just very interested in like performance optimization within in search engines, since Indeed was a big search engine. It's still a search engine, but it does a lot of other things now. So that was sort of my area, or like my passion, and so I did a lot in that, and it was like very deep technical work and also
Mm-hmm.
very impactful as well. And so once I figured out, okay, this is what I'm interested in, I sort of really learned it, and then things happen. Thing I want to mention is imposter syndrome. I
Oh,
have
yes.
a lot of it, had a lot of it. It's much better now. But there were certainly periods in at work where I would just hesitate too much to even do any sort of self promotion or talk about what I did, or really like aim for something where I'm actually uncomfortable. Like, this is difficult. I don't know what to do. I need to go learn.
Mm-hmm.
I would shy away from those kinds of things because I had this thing that like, oh, I don't think I can do it.
How did you handle it? How did you, first of all, recognize that you were going through an imposter syndrome, and second, address it? Because I mean, being completely transparent, we all go through it, and I don't think it's something that we can completely conquer over.
Yeah.
Uh, but the key thing is to recognize that, hey, stop. We're at this moment, stop. We're actually going through an imposter syndrome. And what is the next call to action? Like, what can we do so that we can get ourselves at a point where we can take the action, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So talk to me about it.
I learned from like some very confident men, people that joined after me, but had a kind, I would say, much better career trajectory. And when I observed them, or like observed them in meetings and so on, they would sort of confidently say something. They are 25% sure of something, and they'll just state it, and then follow up later, but still give yourself an out. So if you're wrong, you can come
Yeah.
back. So there's like certain ways to communicate. I saw it more as like a skill gap that I had. Just be more confident and be assertive, and but still give yourself an out. So
I wonder if it's a very female thing. I wonder if it is only.
mhm, I think so. I have to say that of the women that I work with in the tech industry who've made it past 10 years and so on, like they're all huge badasses. Like, I don't know any other word. They're just so good.
Yeah.
They're just so.
Yeah.
So why is that? Because I think like this industry is just so brutally hard on us that
Yeah.
even if you're sort of moderate, you can make it very far as a man, but as a woman, you just get filtered out. And so the people
Yeah.
that last are like usually like really amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it. That says something about you too, by the way. So you should put that feather on your cap
I
before you
don't know.
forget.
I don't know about that. I think I work hard. I think more than anything else, I think it's just I work hard, and if I like something and I want to do it, I like really try and understand and work at it. Yeah. So these setbacks, I think when you go through them, it's definitely hard, and you're upset, and you compare yourself against someone else, and you're like, oh look, I'll never be able to get there. But I think life is a way of working itself out.
Yeah. 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 Rightly said. Rightly said. Having seen all this, I'm in awe about how you still have the gregarious disposition when we all get together and we talk, how you're still able to excel in engineering.
And you're just saying this because you're my cousin, but I don't know about Excel. I'm okay. Yeah, I'm all right.
No, don't sell yourself short. Like, being a director of engineering at HashiCorp is no easy feat.
And then to the point around personal struggles and so on, like I would encourage people to be vulnerable with their colleagues and management. If you try to hide it too much, then even well-minded people in there want to help won't necessarily even know that you're going through anything. So
True.
it's probably good to be vulnerable and like explain.
Yeah.
Don't try to sweep it under the rug like the way I did when I was younger.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm really glad we were able to sit down and talk through this. I mean, this wasn't easy
Yeah,
for either of us.
thank you.
And that's how the cookie crumbles. Preetha reminded me that life is a journey, and you may not always have the kind of experiences that you dreamed and hoped for. Learn to find joys in your new experience. At work, believe in yourself and stay confident. Learn from your peers and even mime them if you have to. Don't hesitate to go deep into the topics of your interest. Most importantly, ask for the help and support when you need it. Be vulnerable. Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Do share your thoughts. I am on Twitter at FarmNectar. Until the next conversation. Cheers, guys.